Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll start with the opening remarks here before I introduce the guests, and then we'll take a break and get the food. That would work that way. So this will take about 5. We'll get this out of the way now. So, hello everyone. We welcome you to the Hamtramck NAACP forum. It's a teach-in on redlining. And just to let you know, this event is sponsored by the Hamtramck NAACP. We have literature on the table over here, so I just want to give you the house rules here before we get going with the event. We have our past events are available on DVD here. The last 2 events we did, one was on racial profiling, and that's available on DVD for $5 there. Also, we did one on the hate crimes bill, and that's available on DVD at the table there for $5. Also, we have t-shirts from the Hamtramck NAACP, if you care to have one, that represent our organization. They're at the table there. We have several different sizes. They're $10. And there's a DVD there of the new DVD of the program called Home Sweet, which was performed in Hamtramck last year. The DVD is now available. Okay, I wanted to give you a little background on our membership. The Hamtramck NAACP is an organization that's struggling to keep it going here in town. It's very difficult with the language barriers and cultural barriers and getting people to work together, especially in an economically distressed community where people are looking for work and trying to survive and stay above board. It's very hard for people to get out and be active in an organization like this, which would actually be very, very beneficial to trying to resolve some of those problems. So, we do have a problem coming up with our NAACP here in Hamtramck. We have not met our quota for minimum membership, which means the organization will be dissolved in July. Hamtramck branch will not exist anymore unless we reach this membership minimum. So if you can join at all, it's $30 for a membership a year. We're right now maybe about 10 or 15 members short. We have an event coming up in the future. Next week, actually. There's flyers on the wall there, and there are flyers there. It's going to be an outdoor barbecue potluck get-together. It's part of our membership drive. It's going to be at the Senior Plaza. A lot of the members in that building join us, and it'll be a great fun outside with a picnic, and we'll hopefully get some members there also. So please, if you can consider being a member of the Hamtramck NAACP, there are membership forms on the table there, and you can leave $30 or write a check to Hamtramck NAACP, because we need members to survive. Also,
a resident?
No, you do not have to be a resident of Hamtramck. Anybody can designate their membership dues goes to Hamtramck, which makes it sort of like the voting thing we used to do in elections when you knew somebody was going to win in Michigan. What was that process called? Yeah. When you have someone down there vote for a Democrat and you vote for a Republican because it didn't matter or whatever. It's just
yeah, what was that?
What was that called? Election trick. Well, we can have that.
Fraud. That's what
Not fraud. No. It's a legal vote. Plunking? Yeah, there's a name for that. Well, we could plunk here in the Detroit area. If you live in Grosse Pointe and they have 1,000 members there and they don't need any more to stay alive, and we do, so you can join this branch. But you could still work with the one there, and you could be officially a member of the OneHamtramck. So that would be very helpful. If you know anybody willing to do that, so we can stay alive, that would be great. Secondly, we need people to work with us, because as you can tell, this is pretty much a 1, 2, 3-person operation here, and this organization needs activists in the organization that will willing to come out and help us do the legwork and get it going. So. We're very thankful to the Zam Zam restaurant right here. No, hang on one second. This might be a phone call from Bert Johnson. Hey, hang on. Hi, Bert. It's that Zam Zam restaurant. It's the old Conant restaurant. Yeah, and they closed off the block, so you have to walk down from one half block. Okay, fine. So we want to thank the people here at Zam Zam for letting us have the event here. We didn't realize there was going to be a close off of the street outside because of the Bangladesh Fair, but to us it's an advantage. You can now, after this event, you can go out and check out the cool stuff going on in this Bangladesh Street Fair too. Okay, we're going to, the program is going to be, we have 4 guests speaking on the panel, and We're going to go in this order. We have Cliff Schrupp, who is here. He's the Executive Director of the Fair Housing Center of Metropolitan Detroit. He'll speak first. Second, we'll have Maryellen Lewis, who is President and CEO of Lewis Associates and also Chair of Global Fair Banking Initiative, and a board member of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. Two experts in their fields, and then we have two elected officials that are going to join us. Martha Scott, who's now Wayne County Commissioner, former state senator. Hopefully she'll be here in time when it's her turn to speak. And hopefully she'll address her Homeowner Protection and Neighborhood Preservation Act, which is the Moratorium on Foreclosures Act, which she has signed. And then we're going to conclude with State Senator of the 2nd District, Bert Johnson, who used to be a state rep, but now he's a state senator. And he's going to address the budget and how that affects the economic situation here in Hamtramck. So that's going to be when we get back from the snacks, which we'd like to invite you to have a few things to get to bite and drink, and then we'll start the program. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, we're about ready to begin. Thank you once again to all of you for coming and joining us this sunny day in Hamtramck. The issue today is a very serious one, redlining. And as you notice on our flyer, we also included the word housing, mortgages, foreclosures, auto insurance, home insurance rates. The reason the Hamtramck NAACP is addressing this specific issue is one of our members, first of all, actually a couple of them in the Bangladesh community, recommended that this is a concern in the community here. And at the time, I was wondering about redlining, because redlining is a term that was used for, since the 60s, I guess. And it was a term to mean that it's a practice of denying or increasing the cost of services, such as banking, insurance, access to jobs, access to healthcare, stuff like that. And it was denying, and I don't see that happening much anymore, and I thought it was sort of resolved with several acts of Congress and others. But then we started realizing that because of the economic chaos that we've been going through with foreclosures and everything else, these are issues are in the subprime rates and the predatory lending practices. These are all tied in together. So we're not only going to talk about redlining this afternoon, but these are issues that affect everyone in many areas. Foreclosures, the budget, the state budget, the way they're disseminating money for different causes, and the fact that this affects everyone, because foreclosures, for example, are the main factor, they say, in declining home values. So we are all suffering from this economic problem, whether you have money to pay for your house or not. The values are going down. So we have four panelists and who have graciously agreed to appear today. And actually, one of them came all the way from Lansing, and we appreciate that trip. But right now, we're going to start out with, we're going to do it in this order. We have Cliff Schrupp, Maryellen Lewis. If Martha Scott arrives in time, she'll be third, and then we'll conclude with our state senator, Bert Johnson. So first, I'd like to introduce you to Cliff Schrupp, who is the executive director of the Fair Housing Center of Metropolitan Detroit since 1977. He's going to talk about the history and definition about redlining and address how racial and national origin redlining has limited housing opportunities and other issues relevant to that. So let me explain before he speaks how we're going to proceed here. We're going to give each of our panelists like roughly 10-15 minutes to speak, and then we're going to open the floor up to everyone to talk and contribute what you would like to say, questions, comments, whatever. And then we'll conclude at 6 o'clock. We have to be finished here. And we'll conclude with our panelists discussing between them if any issues that we've overlooked or forgotten, or react to your responses. So without further ado, we'll begin with our panelist, Cliff Schrupp, the Executive Director of the Fair Housing Center of Metropolitan Detroit. Let's give him a nice welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. And thank you for the invitation to be able to address some of these important issues. And our best wishes to the Hamtramck NAACP and your survival issues that we certainly trust will be successful. As Mr. Meyer suggested, I'm the director of a private nonprofit organization called the Fair Housing Center of Metropolitan Detroit. We've been around since 1977. We help investigate complaints of unlawful housing discrimination. People who have been denied housing because of their race, religion, sex, national origin, those types of issues. If we get evidence of discriminatory treatment, we often find that the only way to resolve these is by getting cases filed in state or federal courts. And since '77, we've assisted over 400 litigations of discrimination in housing and lending in state and federal courts that have produced in excess of $11 million in damages and awards to the plaintiffs in those particular cases.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
It's okay, welcome.
No, not now. I want to eat first.
Good to see you. Our friend from many years, and a very great supporter of fair housing. So we've been around for a while working on housing discrimination issues, and that's also included a number of fair lending issues, and even some insurance issues where the laws apply. One of the things I thought I'd get us started with, the issue, the topic area is, at least initially, is redlining, as it was suggested. And in your packet of information, I passed out some things from the Fair House, a newsletter that we do. And you can review the newsletter at will. But one of the items that's in the packet is a little pink sheet that has a map of the Metro Detroit area on it. The map was actually taken from a book called Sundown Towns, which was written by Jim Lowen, that described communities in the Metro Detroit area and throughout the United States that had policies of not making housing available to African Americans. But it's a good map, so I thought I'd use it for our purposes this afternoon. On the map, I drew a little rectangle around the city of the name Hamtramck. Okay? Pretend that this is a he misspelled it, didn't he? I should talk to Mr. Lowen about that. But I put a little rectangle around it. Pretend that this is a red line around Hamtramck. And imagine that either a bank, a financial institution, or an insurance company, or a real estate firm, but particularly banks and insurance companies, would say, okay, we are not going to make any insurance available to the residents of Hamtramck within that redlined area. Or a bank would say, we're not going to make any mortgages available to people in that area, that redlined area, because we don't want to do business within that area. Just given that the insurance carrier and the financial institution doesn't want to do business in Hamtramck within that redlined area, is that illegal?
I would hope so.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Should be.
Should be.
And under what basis would you say that it's illegal?
Not racial profiling, racial profiling, discrimination, yeah.
Categorically denied our rights.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about dealing with redlining issues is that little practice of the financial institutions or the insurance institutions to redline an area is only illegal if we can show that it is being done for purposes of discrimination based on race, religion, sex, national origin, one of the characteristics protected under fair housing laws. If we can't show that, then they could get by with redlining the area and not having money invested in the area if it's financial institutions, or not approving the insurance. It's not in and of itself an illegal action. It becomes illegal when we are able to demonstrate that it's because of one of these factors, race, religion, sex, national origin. Those factors would have to be established, and obviously any financial institution or insurance carrier is going to say to us, oh no, that's not why we don't want to do business in Hamtramck or wherever else that they don't want to do business. It's not because of race or religion or some other factor. It's because of, well, this is a place that has a lot of foreclosures, and so we don't want to do business in places that have foreclosures. Or this is a place where there's a lot of crime and criminal activities, and we don't want to do business in those places. And so it all boils down to a term that they use a lot, which is risk. There are risk factors involved, and that's why we're not doing business in this area, not because of race, religion, sex, or national origin. So in any litigation that we get involved in, we have to be able to establish that the reason for the discriminatory action is related to race or religion.
In other words, they say to us, prove it.
That's right, we have to prove it. Now, redlining is not something new. The term is relatively recent. It wasn't used much, as Mr. Meyer suggested, until the 1930s or 1960s. But the practice goes back long before then. In the early 1900s, as more African Americans moved into the cities of the North, then we found out many of those cities began practices of racial steering. The people in the housing industry and even the government agencies, and deciding what neighborhoods people of color could legally live in. Pardon? So these practices go back, and the federal government got involved in actually supporting these practices in the 1930s with a program called the Federal Housing Administration Program that provided mortgage insurance for people to be able to purchase homes with federal government mortgage insurance. And one of the provisions in the granting of mortgages by the federal government in the what's called the FHA programs, and I'll quote you a few things from the guidelines, and this is from our federal government, which is supposed to be protecting all of us. Areas surrounding a location are investigated by the FHA to determine whether incompatible racial and social groups are present for the purpose of making a prediction regarding the probability of the location being invaded by such groups. This is our federal government, the federal guidance quotes. If a neighborhood is to retain stability, it is necessary that the properties shall continue to be occupied by the same social or racial classes. A change in social or racial occupancy generally contributes to an instability and a decline in values. The FHA used that reasoning to deny mortgages to African Americans who might be trying to move into a predominantly white neighborhood. They also then made very few mortgages, FHA mortgages, during the 30s and 40s to African Americans in any neighborhood. One of the few neighborhoods that did get mortgages, FHA mortgages, is right near here, called Conant Gardens. And it was the first African American neighborhood in Michigan, and one of the first in the United States to actually get FHA mortgages in the 1940s. Up until that time, white folks were getting mortgages in suburban areas and white areas of Detroit that were not allowed to people of color. In order to help facilitate that process, the federal government produced maps that would show where mortgages would be approved and where they wouldn't be approved because of, or at least for certain groups of people, i.e. people of color. They didn't call that process at the time redlining, but that process of drawing the maps then was picked up by people in the mortgage lending institutions as well as the insurance institutions, and they would do things like we just saw here. They would draw a red line and say, we are not going to do business in these neighborhoods.
And some of those maps are still available in the Library of Congress, the actual maps where the red lines were drawn.
Right. Yeah, you can still pick up those maps, and you might even pick up some on the internet. I'm not sure about that. But that process was then formalized in the form of maps that were designed. Now, they don't do maps anymore, but it doesn't mean that redlining doesn't occur. And some of it is illegal. It becomes illegal when we can show that it is being done because of race, religion, national origin, or one of the protected characteristics under the fair housing laws. If we can't show that, then the institution is going to be able to say, oh, it's not because of those reasons, it's because of risk. And the laws, both the state and the federal laws, allow that as a defense against a redlining charge. And it's been used consistently, and it's what's made it very difficult in the Metro Detroit area to even develop enough evidence to be able to establish that redlining is going on in either the insurance industry or the mortgage lending industry. We've been able to be a little more successful with lawsuits in relation to mortgage lending, where we've been able to establish that financial institutions have in fact chosen not to grant mortgages in areas because of race and national origin, but it's been harder to do that in relation to insurance practices because the federal government doesn't regulate insurance. Insurance is regulated by the state governments, and you really need the state government involvement in order to get to some of the insurance practices, whether it's auto insurance or residential lending insurance or homeowners insurance that is both of which there's some evidence that there's discriminatory practices going on. So those are some basic things about redlining. It does continue. Getting the evidence is important. One of the ways that we try to get some evidence is by a process we call testing, where we send out people posing as home seekers to see if there's differences in treatment because of race or national origin, so that if we can establish that a financial institution or an insurance company is treating people differently because of one of those factors, then that helps build the case. The other way is by people who work for some of these institutions, lending institutions, insurance institutions, to come forward with information that can help us put together the cases that are going on. There's Wells Fargo is being sued in Baltimore, Maryland, and a couple of the evidence pieces that they put together are former employees who've come forward and talked about the instructions they received from their supervisors to discriminate against African Americans in Baltimore. So getting people to come forward who work for some of these institutions with information is very helpful. So if you find information and can assist us in helping to develop evidence of discriminatory practices, and including discrimination that's referred to as redlining, please contact the Fair Housing Center. There's information about the center in your packet. Give us a call and we'll be glad to follow up on these things.
Is your
Okay.
phone number in here as well?
Oh yeah, it's on the front page.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Let me just back that up a little bit, because Cliff never says as much as he should about the importance of the Fair Housing Center. These are the warriors for the causes that you're talking about.
Yay.
And the Fair Housing Center of the metropolitan Detroit area is one of the most active and successful in the nation at actually taking these guys to court and getting them to change their behavior. This is not necessarily, and Cliff is not himself an attorney, but they have a network of cooperating attorneys that themselves take these cases, and it's taking them to court is the most important thing that you can have happen, because that sets the example for everyone else. It chips it in stone so that it's then a law for everyone, and that's something that everyone has to live by. So he was definitely someone you want to be in touch with.
Thank you, Maryellen.
Okay,
Actually,
And thank you, Cliff Schrupp. Before we turn it on to our next panelist, I can't ignore the fact that we had a very prominent politician and dear friend walk in the room during the event, and he's the new congressman from Pontiac. It's our own John. It's John Conant.
Still working on it.
Or you mean we're going to all have to move up to Pontiac now?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it means I may have to travel down Woodbridge.
Yeah, well, all your fans are going to follow you wherever you go. Thank you for all your work you do for us. Now we're very thrilled to have with us a woman who came all the way from Lansing to share her knowledge about this information and to give us ideas of what to do and give us facts about this issue of redlining. Her name is Maryellen Lewis. She's the president and CEO of Lewis Associates, board member of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, and the chair of a Global Fair Banking Initiative. Marylyn's going to address current unfair practices in home and auto insurance for people of color and other issues. So let's welcome all the way from Lansing, Maryellen Lewis.
I'm going to speak close to the mic because I'm at the end of some laryngitis, but I hope you'll be able to hear me pretty well. I'm really just going to be building on what Cliff said because he laid it out for you. This is a long history we have in this country of having core companies, really the core companies of our economy, the banks, the insurance companies, the financial institutions of all kinds, have consistently discriminated against people of color for as long as we have records. When there are records that go back to the early 1900s, when there are records of this kind of discrimination taking place. The work around redlining that we have the most evidence in and have made the most advances in, I think I could say, is in the area of the financial institutions, the banks. And John Conyers knows a lot about this because we've talked a lot about it in his office in Washington when I'm down there for some of these bills to try to get the Community Reinvestment Act to strengthen and to keep it from being eroded. There was a big struggle. Some of you may have been a part of this, not many of you, you're all pretty young, but in the 60s and 70s, there was this struggle for fair housing and fair lending. We got the Fair Housing Act passed in 1968, and by 1977, there had been enough movement across the country of people demonstrating, proving in court and proving to their elected officials that they'd been discriminated against in loans for their homes and for insurance for their homes particularly. we were able to get 2 major bills around that they give the ammunition to communities to fight redlining from banks and financial institutions, and that's 1976 was the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, HMDA, HMDA. It's something that you'll hear a lot, and if you read about this stuff, it really, you don't have to remember that. All you need to know is that banks are required to report the loans that they make, and they're required to report where they're located, and they're required to report race, ethnicity, gender, and in 1977, a follow-up to that is the Community Reinvestment Act. What those did is it empowered us, you here in Hamtramck, me in Lansing, me in with the other places that I work, to get citizens together to say, hey, wait a minute, we're not getting, this isn't fair. And here's the evidence that we have. Back in the early 90s, there was this great piece of software invented that really changed the world for us activists and for you, because you can get this information yourself very easily, where you can look at your community and get this data that's from the HMDA, 1976. All those banks are still required to report it, and it's all gathered in Washington, the Federal Reserve Bank, and by some of the other institutions. You can get that data. A little piece of software called CRA Wiz was invented in 1991 or something, 1992, that would take these numbers and crunch them and spit them out on a little map. And it changed the world, it changed the conversation. It allowed people like you to be able to go to your banks and say 4 or 5 of you, business people or people who have homes or you're concerned is a neighborhood group, and go to your bank and you want to speak with their CRA person or their vice president or whoever would be the proper person for that bank. And you want to sit down with them and talk with them about access to capital for your community. And they might say things like, this is going back, way back before you had these maps, but they say, oh yes, we really care about Hamtramck and we support the Boy Scouts and we support the YMCA and we hold chicken dinners, you know, to raise funds for this other thing. And we gave money for the new park that's being built. And then you, with this new CRA Wiz, you'd be able to take this little sheet of paper you brought with you and say to them, well, that's all very nice, and we really value the fact that you support our community, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about the fact that, you know, all those mortgages that you make in our community, well, see these red dots on this map of Hamtramck, all these red dots right around the surrounding area just over the border, those are all the mortgages you made in the last year. You see this huge blank area where there are no red dots? That's where we live. And that's what we're here to talk with you about today. You want to talk about why is it that there are no loans being made in our community? Why is it that there's no insurance policies being written here? Why are no small business loans being made here? And you have the data. It changed the conversation. It made you then all of a sudden equal for that person who supposedly has all this mysterious information. Well, now you have some pretty solid information that says you don't make loans in our community. The difference between mortgages and what the focus of this panel is supposedly on the insurance practices. The difference is partly what Cliff said, the fact that insurance is not federally regulated. So there's no one in Washington that could suddenly require, like they did with the banks, all the banks had to send their mortgage data annually or quarterly to Washington. They can't do that with insurance because it's state by state and every state is different. It's really important that each state have a strong platform on which citizens can then understand and take action on what's going on locally. That has not happened. There have been spots around the country where this has been done, where there has been active citizens taking action. It has been a long time since something like that has happened in Michigan, although there were some successes in the past in Michigan in the areas of insurance. But it's important to know that there are strategies that can be used that step outside that arena of courts. Cliff can tell you about the courts. He takes the guys to the court. And he actually gets them sued and gets them to pay the fine. Well, there's other things that citizens can do that have nothing to do with that. There's another kind of risk that Cliff was talking about risk. Companies, and particularly large companies like banks and insurance companies, do what they have, their own internal kinds of risk assessment. And one piece of that risk assessment is what they call reputational risk. That's a corporate term, reputational risk. But it essentially grew out of this movement of communities to fight banks around redlining. It meant saying to the banks, you're not getting us loans, and we're going to shout about it. We're going to get it in the news. We're going to march on your bank. We're going to hold, rallies across the street from you. And when that happens, it makes corporate people really nervous. So they call it reputational risk. And reputational risk is a real thing. It is truly measured by all these financial institutions. So it's not always necessary to take them to court. Sometimes it's just necessary to make enough of a sting and get enough high-level people, such as your elected officials, to be working with you and speaking with you to make progress on getting this discriminatory types of behaviors removed. I say that just because it is difficult to get these court cases completed, and Cliff knows because he's got a lot of really successful ones that have been models for the nation, but it's really tough. Citizens can do more because you don't necessarily have to prove to a judge or a jury. You just need to get it in the paper and get them a little nervous. Okay. I also mentioned we did a little segue in what Cliff was talking about that I want to clarify a little bit. It used to be called redlining because it meant we don't loan in your area. It changed a little bit in the late 1990s when all of a sudden all of these small companies that were not banks, that are not regulated, little mortgage companies, little different kinds of loan companies, check cashing places, all different kinds of little places that deal with your money started popping up and making loans, even insurance, at very high rates, but nobody was tracking it. They're called predatory loans, and it even got the name reverse redlining because instead of staying away from communities of color, they would target communities of color or communities of elderly or communities of other vulnerable people that they could go in and make a huge buck from because they figured that they can't get their insurance anywhere else, they can't get their loan anywhere else, so we'll get them to pay a 400% mortgage by tricking them around this and that and the other. Reverse redlining really took on its own at the turn of the century, at 2000, and has gotten huge and was one of the reasons for the meltdown. The real core of the meltdown was lack of regulation, but partly it's lack of regulation of all these people who are making these bad loans and expensive loans and trying to take people's money rather than helping them to build wealth in their own communities. So that happened. So when you're talking about redlining, you also need to consider that you're talking about this reverse redlining at the same time, high cost loans. So it's both keeping out the good stuff and attracting like a magnet all of the really very expensive bad loans. There is a local organization in addition to Cliff's that you may find some help from. I know for certain that Cliff will be helpful to you. I believe also the Detroit Alliance for Fair Banking may be another organization that you could work with. I know them real well, but I'm not positive that they do stuff in insurance right now. They do a lot in terms of bank redlining and bank credit and predatory lending by non-bank companies like mortgage companies. And so that information is something that we'll make sure that we get to your leader, and you can hopefully be able to be in touch with them as well. But as I said, I'm not positive that they do stuff in insurance yet. They may still simply be focused on banks. To let you know, nationally, there's been significant progress against bank redlining. That is, the banks, the ones that are regulated by the federal agencies that are responsible for CRA, that are required to report their HMDA data. In fact, those mortgages turned out to be only 6%, less than 6% of the huge meltdown. were the ones, only 6% of those loans that were covered by CRA. All the others were done by these fly-by-night companies, and then the unregulated mortgage companies and others. So that there is value in that. But of course, then the economy changed and people were losing their jobs because because the meltdown started turning around to affect everyone. And because of that, there's been there has been serious pain in many communities, including Hamtramck. In the nation, there are a number of nationally there are a number of initiatives that are being undertaken, working with President Obama, working with state legislators across the country to get better practices for protecting people from foreclosure, giving them better access to get out of foreclosure, and giving people better, safer products when they buy a home now compared to when they tried to buy it 3 years ago. There's not been as much progress in insurance, and I will do my best to keep you informed because there's some things in the works. There are a number of suits that are being placed against very large insurance companies having to do with redlining. But as Cliff pointed out, it's difficult because there's no national regulator for them. So in some ways it has to be done on a state-by-state basis. And if I understand correctly, we may learn a little bit more about what the state of Michigan is doing in our next speakers.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maryellen. For those of you who came in after the beginning, let me just mention a couple things. One is that there is an appetizer buffet that's available over here for donations, $5 if you can put in a buck. And then we are going to ask our next panelist to speak, and then we'll open it up to Q&A from the audience. We have to leave the room by around 6 o'clock or a few minutes after that. Before I'd like to introduce our next panelist. This gentleman is very well known in this area. He's the kind of guy who talks the talk and walks the walk, and he's out there on the street with us on a lot of struggles. Bert Johnson was born and raised in Detroit, and he's in his first term now as a state senator. He was a state representative for 2 terms, and now he's replacing Bill McConaughey as a state senator. This year, Senator Johnson was selected to sit on the Appropriations Committee and was assigned the position of Minority Vice Chair of the DEL&G, General Government and Judicial Committees. He also sits on the Redistricting Committee, which is that the committee that put the counties on Pontiac? Or?
Wasn't me.
and you guys have to talk together. And serves as Minority Vice Chair of the Regulatory Reform Committee. Well, anyways, I have to say one quote of his from his speech that he gave on the Senate floor. This, to me, is an astounding sentence. I think this is one of the most colorful statements with 8 descriptive adjectives that describe our budget in one sentence. He said on the Senate floor, "This institutionally racist, systematically dysfunctional, economically depressing, dictatorial, discriminatory budget undermines the citizens of this great state." I'm very grateful.
Good evening, everybody. Really good to be with you all. Let me acknowledge our good Congressman John Conyers, who's been on the scene for many years. You know, these branches of NAACP are very, very important to the cultural identity and then the collective wherewithal of what it is that we do in our communities. And, you know, it's very impressive that we are not, in this particular NAACP, sitting in a room of just African American people. That the NAACP that was begun many, many years ago, many moons ago, was really an umbrella organization that was started by many good people just like yourselves. That they saw some inequity in the community across a number of lines. They decided that there was really something that needed to be done, and so they came together. And these great organizations, this collection of organizations across the country, have really been the bedrock, you know, the epicenter, if you will, for getting things done and highlighting the discriminatory practices of whomever or whatever. And so I'm really happy to be here. And Bill, my pledge to you is that I'll get a couple of folks myself to become members of the organization. But all NAACP need to be active and robust and discerning and fierce and loyal to the citizens that need the help. And so, you know, when I talk to folks about what's happening in my district, which is the second Senate seat, and that is this city, Hamtramck, Highland Park, all 5 Grosse Points, a large section of Northeast Detroit, and Harper Woods, I do think you really get a sense of how diverse, just how diverse my district is. It is the most diverse district in the state. You know, people come into the United States of America by way of Miami, New York, and Hamtramck, Michigan. And when they come here, what they're coming here for is that they expect that this is going to be a community that understands them, receives them, respects them, and then helps to lay out those opportunities, and they can kind of go forward. They can either establish real roots here in Hamtramck, or they can kind of spread out across the metro area or even into other areas of the country. And so Hamtramck means a lot to this nation. Hamtramck's healthiness and its place in this country really mean a lot going forward. And so I've been asked to come here and talk about the budget, and the budget is one of those living, breathing documents. I guess I should start by telling you that Governor Rick Snyder is not anyone's Lord and Savior, so he will not be ruling over us for the rest of our lives. That's the good news. The bad news, if you will, is that we will live with some of these dictatorial policies, practices, if you will, that the Republican right is establishing at the state level. And make no mistake about it, all across the United States of America, what is really under attack are states' rights. The federal government gives states these rights, and people, the citizens, depend on the states to see that those rights are secure and that they allow us to thrive, and that we have this peaceful opportunity to really be, you know, great in this country. And that's what makes this country great, until and unless we get folks who plant themselves out in Lansing who have kind of figured that, well, I'm done making a whole bunch of money in the private sector, so maybe I'll come to the public sector and try to reconfigure the rules to make an allowance so that when I get back to the private sector, I can make a whole bunch more money again. And, you know, we've seen, for whether it be the pension tax or emergency management law, or taking money from the least of these in our community, or the getting rid of the EITC subsidy, taking money out of the mouths of our children who are really sort of held hostage to this idea that we're creating this global education environment for them to really take advantage of, and they're going to get out here and they're going to take over the world. We're not, when we're taking the money back from their subsidy. So all across this nation, there have been these movements, and these movements are in concert with one another, that if good men and women like ourselves remain quiet and sit on the sideline, we will watch this country go to the people who are trying to establish the haves and the have-nots. And when you look at men of color, women in general, women who still in many places do not earn the same as men do, women who all across this country are under attack for their decisions on whether or not they will maintain a pregnancy or abort a pregnancy. People who are simply trying to get into this country based on what this country has been to the rest of the world, and saying to themselves, if I could just get to America to get some of that education, then I can set myself and my family free. You know, a lot of what we believe here is in fact under attack. And it is up to us in this NAACP branch to continue to try to stamp that out and bring it to a halt. So this budget has a lot of really bad things in it. And the most glaring of them all is, to me, the fact that there is nothing creative in the budget. And so if you look around this room right now, there's a huge gap between those of us who have lived a little bit and the young people. There are not a lot of young people in this room. And I submit to you that that is all across the state just as well, because this state has not rolled out the red carpet for our young people to make them feel at home, whether it be by supporting them in an education or making it so that their lifestyle, what they're attracting or what they want to attract, it is here for them to take advantage of. That's why we're losing a number of our young people to the rest of the country. This budget, it lacks creativity. It also lacks compassion, because the last time I checked, people are still losing those homes that they fought so hard to be in a position to obtain. And land and wealth that comes from land ownership is still one of the oldest forms of wealth in the country, in the world. And as long as our people continue to lose their properties, to lose this land, they're losing their toehold and thus their strength in their own financial, in their home. They're losing their ability to be wealthy. And that really bothers me. And so one of the things that I've talked to the governor about is, are we gonna have a final discussion on mortgage foreclosure? And you know, Martha Scott is not here yet, but I am on the heels of her as the next senator. And Martha Scott has championed issues like this for years. You know, she's been talking about insurance redlining. She's been talking about at the county commission mortgage foreclosure. And I'm talking about those same things in her absence from the legislature. You know, none of this stuff is unique to just us. John Conyers has been around for, 13, 14 years longer than I've been alive. And so I'm sure he can tell us all about how cyclical this stuff is and how we've been here before and what it takes to get out of it, and whether the policymakers who are in charge are putting us in a position to get beyond this stuff. And so, it makes my stomach hurt what's coming out the legislature in Lansing. Now, all that being said, it's very convenient for me to tell you, I'm fighting it. I'm fighting it. Well, where I come from, you need to win a fight or two in order to establish some legitimacy. So not only are we fighting it, we are attacking the conscience of the people we serve with. And that is to say, it's one thing to sit in Bloomfield Hills and, no aspersion cast on Bloomfield Hills, great little city. But it's one thing to sit in a very affluent pocket of Michigan and make decisions that won't and don't affect people that they serve with. It is a completely different thing to come down here with me and be my guest in my district and understand how those decisions, or the lack thereof good decisions, really do make for bad days and nights for the people who walk the streets of Hamtramck.
That's right.
And for us, Democrats, even though there are only 12 of us, 12 of 38 Democrats, only 2 women who are Democrats in the Democratic caucus, we have managed to stick together and really try to define for the state of Michigan what the real issues are affecting us all. And somehow, based on my background and where I've come from and what I've been a part of, I find that if we can protect women, if we can protect people of color, if we can protect our seniors, if we can protect children, somehow we've protected everyone just the same. Those people are sort of those protected classes that if we do so as an NAACP branch or as a Democrat affiliate to the party, if we do those things, we are taking care of people. People will have better days based on our protections of them. And so, let's talk about redistricting for a minute, because Bill just brought up something that was very important. Our congressman, and Congressman Conyers, this was shocking to me when I saw this. The Republicans put out a plan that in essence flipped the constituencies of our 2 congressmen. One is our new Congressman Hanson Clark, who I've served with, and the other is Congressman Conyers. Flipped their constituencies and really put them in the districts that either of them has. Now, on one hand, that is, maybe you could just call that politics. On the other hand, you could really call it a dastardly deed, because what appears to me to be at play is a complete disenfranchisement of the constituents to the people that they have, number 1, elected, but number 2, come to expect to be in a position to represent us. And so the Republicans have been not coy, not covert, they have been very openly discriminative in this process. And what they are doing to themselves, in my estimation, is setting themselves up for court battle, which I believe that they will lose. If you look at the 2 districts that were put out, they were gerrymandered as just about as much as you could gerrymander these 2 districts inside and right on the fringe of the city of Detroit. So there's a lot for us to fight for when and if we get to that place. We've got about another week with these maps that we're going to try to make some sense of them. And I know the congressman and Hanson Clark, our other congressmen, have hired counsel, and they are offering maps and they're offering reasonable versions of what these districts should look like. So all in all, folks, I guess, my bottom line is this. Here in the state legislature, and state legislatures across the country make the majority of the laws. States' rights, again, are on the line. What is incumbent upon us is to make sure that we are active. And so when I walked in and Bill said, Bert, I wish we had more people, I'm one of those students of the class that says, hey, we work with who we get. We work with who comes to the meeting. And this is enough to start something significant in this community. So I want you to stay involved, number one. I want you to use your email. I want you to write. I want you to call. I want you to put your feet on the floors in the offices of myself and my colleagues, because they need to see your face. They need to know that it's not just Bert Johnson, African-American brother out of the city of Highland Park or Detroit, who's standing in their face on the Senate floor saying, what you're doing is wrong. They need to know that it is men and women, other people of color, other nationalities, people who are liberally based, people who are moderate based, people who are even conservative based, but people who are willing to stand up for our rights and say that this stuff is wrong, and not only do we not stand for it, we're gonna call you out on it and make sure that come election time, we get after you. So my hat is off to the NAACP and the work you've been doing here, and the awareness that you're trying to bring to all these issues, because they really do culminate under this umbrella called states' rights. What will we do? Will we allow people to keep taking us over? Or will we get out on the stump and start making the difference for ourselves? When Barack Obama was elected in 2008, that was a movement. Make no mistake about it. Everybody supports the first African-American president to run, the first African-American to run for president and win. But this next election, it won't be a movement. This is just an election. Okay? And this is our opportunity to say to the world that not only do we understand what we have been a part of, we know how to preserve what it is that can take us to the next level. And so if we want to keep these issues of fair housing and mortgage foreclosure moratoriums and finally getting insurance reform that benefits the people and making sure that we do away with this and raising the bar on that, if we want to make sure we even have those opportunities, number one, we've got to have people who understand the quality of our lives in office, and we need to keep them elected. But then number two, we need to call out and get rid of the rest of those folks who would do us harm if they had all the juice in the first place. And I think we're getting a real taste of that with this regime that is now in Lansing. And so I know that the petitions are around for Governor Snyder's recall. I know that the petitions are around for the emergency management recall. And I'll leave you with this. We have had an EFM in the city of Hamtramck. Somehow magically, without these new draconian top-down dictatorial laws that now are encompassed in this emergency manager's law, somehow we found ourselves out of that financial bind. We got back on sound footing. We didn't like the guy who came down here, but that wasn't the purpose. But he had enough tools and obviously enough intelligence, and combined with the community's advocacy in the direction of making sure we held him accountable, we got Hamtramck's financial house in order, and we emerged from emergency financial management. So that tells me that there was really not that much wrong with the emergency financial management rule we had in place, and that a new one was not as necessary as the folks in Lansing tried to make the greater state of Michigan believe. And so I'll answer any questions if you have any, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Senator Bert Johnson. Very fortunate to have you in our district. Thank you very much for coming and joining us. Yes, the financial manager we had here in Hamtramck. Well, it was very easy to balance the budget if you have the power to just wipe out a few jobs and close the DPW department and all sorts of things like that. Sell off all our property. Yeah, it's very, very easy to balance a budget that way. Unfortunately, it's hard to balance a budget when you try to keep people's jobs. And we have to find a way to do that. And yes, it's much worse now with the new law of the emergency financial manager. So we certainly don't want one here in Hamtramck or anywhere else in the state. So we thank all our panelists for giving us things to think about and answering some of our questions, but hopefully raise some more questions, and I'm sure you all have something to say. And we could pass the mic around. We are recording this so that if you don't mind speaking on the mic so that we can have a recording of it, that would be helpful. You can address your questions or comments to any of the panelists or all of them, or or just say whatever you want to say. We have a half an hour here, and we're going to try to give everybody who needs to speak a chance to speak, and then we'll close it out. So who would like to go first? I know this person, her name is Caroline.
Yes, you do. I'm actually just going to say thank you to all three of you. It was very informative, and I'm glad I'm here today. I will tell you very quickly that I was an insurance agent from 1974 to 1978, and they openly, in my training, with all Stevens Point, Wisconsin, Century Insurance, remember those people? And sent me to Grand Rapids for 3 months for training. Let me tell you, openly, they were training me to redline. And I was very young, and I was the quote out of the women's movement. They had me on an only woman on a 15-man team. It was really a thrill. I hated it. Actually, that's why I quit that business. But the reality is, I hated all that they did. There were so many isms in there. And I was faced with racism for the first time in my life. I was born and raised in Detroit. Went to Visitation High School at 12th and Webb. Didn't realize, I was with, which all child should do, all children at 13, because then you know that everybody is the same, right? But they were preaching racism. And I just wish now that I was still working there, because I'd love to testify. But anyway, I can tell you that was part of the training back then. And that was 74.
One of the things that we've been doing at the Fair Housing Center has been encouraging people who work for housing providers, insurance, who are in a position to know that their own organization or employer has been discriminating, to come forward with that evidence and tell us about it, so we can use it to help build cases. And interestingly, we are finding people who do that and have come forward. I wish I could say we were getting them out of the insurance industry, but we were getting them out of at least the housing sales and rental industry, who are coming forward. And we have one real estate sales agent who was showing a home in Harper Woods, I think, or one of these areas, to an African-American family. The agent in her same office had the listing, and asked the agent who was showing the home, are you showing it to an African-American couple? Because they don't want to sell to an African-American couple. And the agent said, I can't even answer that question, legally. But then came forward with information to us and to the attorneys that we had involved in the case, and was willing to testify against the agent who was in the next office to her. So we are finding people who are coming forward, and we encourage that kind of information, testimony, because we do know that there are people like that had your experience that are out there who can come forward, and we encourage them to do so.
Okay, this is, so far we learned that this is, we have so much to our boundary with this red line and imposed on us because of race or color, whatever, insurance, that. So what is the specific, the right way, so overcome our this burden or the problem? Please, I need answer from our representative, state representative, state senator, please.
Well, let me kind of give you a little bit of history. So, the insurance code as it exists today is what is the rules that we live under with the insurance. Make no mistake about it, have been made legal. There are laws that are legal. What I would need to really do insurance the way I'd like to do it, and that means that I get everybody low rates, and I keep us in a position to really achieve top-notch medical service if, in fact, you get in one of these catastrophic accidents. About 3% or so of the people who get in accidents across the state of Michigan get in these really catastrophic accidents. I mean, the kind that alter your life for the rest of your life. You will need millions of dollars of medical care. You will have to refurbish your home to fit your medical needs and that kind of thing. That's about 3% of people. Those people, because of the monies that we pay into what's called the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association, those people have a pot of money set aside so that when they get in these accidents, they can receive that care. Well, what is at stake here, and what other states have done that kind of offers something similar to what Michigan does in insurance policy, is they have capped it. They put a cap on the amount of money that if you get in one of these accidents, the amount of money you can get. And the next nearest state is New York, state of New York. You get about $50,000 of insurance coverage there. You can opt to buy more insurance medical coverage should you need it, but that's about the cap. Well, we have the Cadillac, if you will, of medical services or insurance services in the state. We just have to pay a lot of money for it. What I would like to do is lower the amount that people have to pay, but put us in a position to receive the medical care. So there is a proposal on the table that I don't necessarily agree with. And I think Representative Conyers will agree with me. Sometimes we don't agree on everything that's put forward. If it is philosophically or fundamentally bad, we will never agree on it. But if there's some wiggle room where we could see maybe an opportunity to make it better, we'll get down in the weeds and start to work with it and try to make it into something. Well, Senator Virgil Smith has put forth a bill idea that would create a pool or create a, a pilot program, so that people who are modest or low income can actually get into a better insurance rate or insurance relationship, and then they could pay very small amounts for that insurance. They did something like this in California, and while I don't agree because it doesn't take into account everybody who's paying these high insurance rates, it is a place to start. And I have to be honest with myself that in this Republican-dominated legislature, where many of them have themselves insurance interests and would never change the code against their own financial interests, if it is a place to start that we might be able to get a little bit of redress on this grievance for people and get them into the mix, then I'm willing to take that chance and start that discussion. But I've known too many people who've gotten these catastrophic accidents personally. I am not going to go away from what Michigan has been providing as this top-notch medical care. If you've ever known somebody in one of these really bad accidents, it is an extremely sobering thing to see and to know that this person will be this way for the remainder of their days. And it's a really tough existence on families, and it's costly. And so I don't want to exacerbate the Medicaid budget by dumping these people over in there if we don't have that coverage available. That's a long way of saying that the Republicans are in charge. I got to find a way to get a little bit of something done as soon as possible.
I would like to address Martha Scott's bill before the County Commission, because I think it's extremely important. Unfortunately, I don't have the whole list of all the provisions that are in the bill with me, but the 2-year moratorium on foreclosures in Wayne County would be extremely important and is in many respects long overdue, because a lot of damage has been done to our neighborhoods and to the fortunes of people living in Wayne County. The second part of this is I would like to encourage everyone who is here to contact your commissioner, your Wayne County commissioner. If in all probability, in most cases, it will be Martha Scott, but somebody expressing, the importance to them of this particular piece of legislation to her is support that she can use in fighting for this particular bill. And if you have friends and relatives living elsewhere, you have other Wayne County commissioners, you certainly should get in touch with them and discuss the importance of this legislation with them. Thank you.
It's a great point, and I'll just try to address it in her absence. A moratorium is the way to go, because number one, if you can stop somebody from doing something that's really devastating the community, you get their attention. And the attention of the banks are the folks whose attention we're trying to get. by saying you're not going to be able to do any measure of business, whether it be foreclose or seizures of the properties. But, I need to pull everybody's coattail to 2 points that I'm not sure everybody is very aware of. Number one, in the county of Wayne, and our county treasurer is one of just a couple of county treasurers across the country. I just found this out in the last 30 days. One of only a couple county treasurers who, up until about 6 months ago, after it was stopped by the CEO at the county, really sort of had a bit of an incentive package in his compensation plan to continue to seize properties and foreclose on them. I mean, astounding if you really dig into this and find out what I'm talking about. And what I'm saying is, for another $80,000 or so in one calendar year payment, the county treasurer was sort of incentivized to continue to see properties go to foreclosure for property tax foreclosure. And that's disgusting. That is utterly disgusting, because you have a number of people who have purchased their homes, own their homes, but because they're upside down in these market values, and they're still forced to pay very high property tax, they're losing their homes. These are people on fixed income, people who are on limited pension income, and these are people who are losing their homes because the system is working against them. But the other thing people need to recognize is that even our sheriff has the ability to say, you know what? I'm not doing any more sheriff sales. I'm not just going to keep sending our people to the guillotine. It just doesn't make sense, because we're at that point, the county just becomes a warehouse for a ton of properties that it can't move, it can't market, and that the people who lost them are still going to be saying to themselves, okay, now what do I do? Where do I go live now? And this isn't a bunch of people who don't have any money, but as a result of the market collapse, the money that they do have just doesn't stretch far enough to make the payments. And so, those two things, and applying pressure there, and that's the importance, in my estimation, of Commissioner Scott's legislation at the Wayne County Commission, is because it is seated really at one of the power centers of where we stop the process from happening at in the first place. And so that's why I'm very thankful that she's been doing it. We've been trying to do it at the state, but it's been falling on deaf ears.
If you don't know, you should be aware of the Community Legal Resources. Maryellen is the head of it, is an attorney, and they have been particularly involved in fighting the tax foreclosures issue. And so if any of you are involved with the tax foreclosure issues with Wayne County, be sure to contact Maryellen and the Community Legal Resources.
Regarding the moratorium on foreclosures, there are flyers over here on this table regarding this. You can check it out. There's email connections and stuff, and they're asking people to get your commissioners to sign on to the Homeowner Protection and Neighborhood Preservation Act. Who would like to speak next? Do they have any comments or questions? Well, we can't go on much longer without hearing from our favorite congressman. Here it is.
Thank you so much. First of all, the Hamtramck citizen that works with me on mortgage, on fraud at the federal level, Beverly Tran, just came in the room. Let's give her a round of applause for all she's doing in our office. This announcement, on Monday at 5:30 at the King Solomon Baptist Church at 6100 14th Street in Detroit, we are having the Progressive Caucus in Washington speak out, in which we want people to talk about the jobs, foreclosures, the economy, and so forth. And I'm bringing in, not only will Hanson Clark be there, but Congressman Keith Ellison of Minnesota, who grew up in Detroit, is coming in, because we're touring a dozen cities, and we started off in his city, and Detroit is the second one. That's June 27th, 5:30, 6100 14th Street, King Solomon Baptist Church. And I wanted all of you to come out, and I hope that these three expert panelists, if they're there, I would love for you to be on one of the panels to field some of the complaints, what we can and have to do at the local level, as well as those of us who will be talking about it at the federal level. And so that's a critical invitation.
I would certainly be honored. Just wanted to
Could
mention,
you?
my sister works for Keith Ellison, so
Oh,
we get a lot of connections there. Yes, I'd love to do that.
This will be great.
He knows me too. I see him all the time.
And if Senator Bert Johnson can consider it, this would be fabulous. 5:30, and we'll be doing some other things. And just to reward are these leaflets, flyers? Oh, have you distributed them? Okay, so just hot off the press. Pass them out. Now, just to show you how important it is that we all work together, I'm sure glad I was here when the senator was here. Oh, thanks, Ms. Ellis, for helping us with that. At noon on Monday, we will have a delicious lunch prepared. See, we have the standard fare there at Local 22, Cadillac UAW. But then some of the ladies bring their own delicacies that they prepare at home, salads and little appetizers, and we're developing a lot of camaraderie around the food bill. I mean, we're beginning to think that we just come there to see what there's going to be on the menu. But that's Monday at 12 noon. So this is two invitations. At 12 noon at Cadillac UAW 22, 4300 Michigan Avenue at Clark. And here is a group bill of retirees at Cadillac Local who formed another group for full and universal health care out on their own, and they formed a great, that they're doing, have you been there once? Have you been to this at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what we're doing now is we're going around the metro area for other retiree locals, and they started off with a handful of guys. There were 5 people that decided to do this. Now, the room is full. There are 100, 150. I mean, because they come from everywhere else. So what we're going to do, Senator, is that we're going to start holding these at other locals, obviously, instead of trying to do it all at one local. But these retirees, I mean, they started this on their own and let me come in afterward, and we were able to augment it. So there's 2 things for us to do on Monday. And does anyone else have anything to say? Because I wanted to talk about the 40th annual Congressional Black Caucus Conference in Washington, D.C. from Wednesday, September the 21st to September the 25th. And boy, those are 4 or 5 days packed with international, people come from all over the world for that. I mean, we get into all the issues. And we have got a lot of issues to deal with. And I will be handling the jazz panel bill on Thursday night. And we may have a guest pianist who's who doesn't even know that he's going to be invited yet. Yeah, I know you weren't listening. So just be there. As the kids say, be there or be square. Okay, I know you will. And you've been to some of those. We have some really great things going on. But the bigger and more important things are the jobs panel that I will be controlling, HR 870, the Full Employment and Humphrey Hawkins Full Employment and Balanced Growth Act, which we are really pushing our beloved president to say something about, instead of just speaking rhetorically about the tragedy of jobs. You got to come out, as he knows better than I, with a bill. And then 676, the universal health care bill that goes beyond Obama's bill, which I proudly call Obamacare. As Ted Stevens, what's his name in Ann Arbor? Anyway, he's got big buttons on. I love my Obamacare. And we've got to improve it, but it's a platform to get to universal health care. Because if we couldn't pass that bill, we'd never pass the one that we've been supporting. So I thank you for this opportunity.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Could I just add one last comment for something that you often do here in Michigan? And in fact, I would urge that the Hamtramck NAACP itself become a member of. There is something called a Michigan Foreclosure Prevention Task Force. I'm sure that Mr. Conyers knows about this. It has been working for a couple of years. It's behind the initiatives at the state level. There's some really good, the moratorium bill that came out of this group. But it's a network of people from all over the state who are working against foreclosure, working in local cities. There's some of them are prevention counselors, some of them are elected local officials. It's a very strong network, and it's also a really good information network on what's going on in Michigan. So I would urge the Hamtramck NAACP, it's free, and I will get the information to you, to request to become a member, become a part of the list. It does involve conference calls if you are able to join. If not, you just get the information. But it's a really important initiative here in the state.
Say the name of the task force again.
The Michigan Foreclosure Prevention Task Force.
Foreclosure prevention.
One other comment, and that is, there is a real close connection between the jobs issues that Congressman Conyers is working on and our mortgage issues. If we don't have those jobs, there's not a lot that we're going to do on the mortgage issues. So we absolutely need the full employment.
I have emphasized that too, because I don't want to let the banks off the hook. This started, the crisis began as an initiative of greed and malfeasance by the financial institutions in this country. It was targeted predatory lending practices and a whole lot of other illegal practices that led us to this state. But now on top of it, it has become an unemployment crisis. And so it can't be solved without getting people back working again.
All right, we're going to close out the afternoon teach-in, and we appreciate you all for coming and sharing in this event with the Hamtramck NAACP. I do want to remind you once again, if you weren't here at the beginning, I want to tell you there's a literature table over here. There is a table of things that we are selling for Hamtramck NAACP. Our organization, this branch specifically, is in threat of being dissolved because we don't have the minimum requirement of members. So we need new members. You don't have to live in Hamtramck. All you have to do is pay $30 and put your name on a paper right there. And then secondly, we would like you to actually work with us. That would be even the best thing. So we don't only want you $30, we want you to come here and organize events like this and help us put together. So if you live in Hamtramck especially, you know what other organization in the city is addressing these concerns of discrimination, racism, foreclosure, these sort of critical, serious issues. the NAACP, and we need your help, and we thank you so much. You can buy t-shirts for $10. We have some DVDs from our previous teach-ins for $5, and there's another DVD of Home Sweet there for $10, and then there's literature over there. Our next event is next Saturday, a week from today, at 1 o'clock. There's flyers over there. It's a barbecue potluck at the Senior Plaza in Hamtramck. It's going to be an outdoor affair, and we would love to have you come and join us for an outdoor gathering. It's a membership, part of our membership drive. This will be more of a social event. And if you know anybody else, any friends of yours who you would like to have as members of the NAACP here, please tell them about it. We only have one more week to get our minimum requirement of members, or we're not going to be in Hamtramck anymore. So please help us. I do. Next Saturday, there's flyers over there. It's going to be at the Senior Plaza on Holbrook. I want to thank our panelists. This is Maryellen Lewis and Cliff Schrupp. And Bert Johnson had to leave. Well, let's give them a nice round of applause. On behalf of the NAACP, I'd like to acknowledge everybody in the room, and I'd like to go around and mention, first of all, that we have the priest from the church down on Conant here, from Queen of Apostle, and Father Bogdan is here. Bogdan, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate that. And we, as you know, there's something going on outside on Conant. It's a Bangladesh street fair, and it's an exciting thing in our community for us to share each other's cultures. So please hang around the community and share in the Bangladesh celebration. We have a couple candidates here that I know for sure for City Council here in Hamtramck, and not that I want to go around and introduce everybody, but I do want to acknowledge, I know two people for sure. This is our good friend Abu Saeed Mahfouz right here, who's running for City Council. And our friend in the back, Anam Mia, is running for council. Is there any other candidates here? Okay, I think I recognize most of them. Okay, well, each of you are very important in Hamtramck. Please support our group, Hamtramck NAACP. If you're not a member, sign in over here. And thank you so much for coming today.